need to make. As nature is changing around us and outside, we're seeing all of these kind of replenishment of life. What changes do you need to make to be in lockstep with nature? We've got 3 units left, including this 8th unit that we're starting today, so 8, 9, and 10. We've got 10 standards left. 5 of those 10 standards we're going to go ahead and knock out in this 8th unit. We've got 35 days of school and only 30 days before finals begin. For some of you who might be in AP classes, then your AP exams are really only about 20 school days away, maybe not even that many. So we're really, we're in the final stretch here. And I say the final stretch because it is going to really fly by. Like I said, 30 days of school before finals begin. In this class, the EOC will be on May 25th. And that's going to come by really, really quickly. I promise you. So we've got some more preparing to do. The good thing about it is the 2 other biology teachers and I have kind of set it up. So we'll have almost 2 weeks, about 8 school days to review for the EOC. So that'll be plenty of time to get some good practice and talk about some things that, we have talked about, but that maybe you just need a refresher since we first introduced it. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, I just want to remind you that the EOC is 20% of your final grade. So it's something that we need to be preparing for. I believe in each of you, and I believe in your potential to get a 4 or a 5 on that exam. I know that all of you have that potential, even if your test grades haven't been exactly where you would like them to be so far. We're still going to take at least 3 more tests. We're still going to take at least 3 more tests between now and the actual EOC exam. So they will provide excellent practice. I'm happy to have those of you who are here in person. You'll be here 4 days a week now. So being in person, I think, is going to be a good thing for this subset. And for those of you who are at home, you still have everything that you need. And if you need something else, just let me know. But I think you have the tools that you need to be successful. So 30 days, really 31 days until our EOC exam, 31 days of school, and just over a month and 13 days until then. So it's going to fly by. I promise you that. Okay, so this unit, we're going to focus on evolution. So hopefully it'll be a unit that you find some interest in. I think evolution is a cool topic. It's important for us to remember that some people have different beliefs about evolution. Some people's religious beliefs don't necessarily align perfectly with evolution, and that's okay. Evolution is a theory, and as a theory, what we mean is that there's no way to actually prove 100% that evolution is true. However, we're going to talk about a lot of the evidence that does support this theory of evolution in this unit. You all are strong thinkers. You all are free thinkers, so you all can come to conclusions on your own. You can marshal evidence and start to say, like, hey, I think that because I learned this, I can go ahead and conclude that this is true. And that's the whole point of this unit. We're going to talk about the evidence of evolution. Specifically in this standard, it says students should explain how fossil, biochemical, and anatomical evidence support the theory of evolution. We're also going to talk about natural selection in this unit. This is, again, part of natural selection is used to support the theory of evolution. The standard specifically states students should explain how natural selection influences the changes in species over time. So you've probably heard this term before, natural selection. We'll talk more about that. We've also got diseases and natural selection. So we're going to talk about bacteria, viruses, and chemicals. Of course, over the last year and a half, almost of our lives, we've been very deeply concerned with a specific virus. And so we'll talk more about the coronavirus. And we can also have this opportunity to talk about vaccines as well. Okay, great, thank you. And then let's see, is this the last one? Nope, we've got 2 more. Classification systems, we're going to talk about those today, so I won't spend too much time talking about it right now. And then classification models, we'll also introduce these today, specifically focused on what are called dichotomous keys and phylogenetic trees. You guys will get some practice with those today. All right. So here is where we start. And I gave you all who are here in person some handouts that hopefully will kind of aid you in your note taking today. We don't have that many notes to take, but everything that you're seeing on your paper, you are going to see reflections of that on the screen. So it should be pretty easy to follow along. Those of you who are at home, nothing new here. We're going to continue taking notes in the ways that we always have. The objective is to explain the historical development and changing nature of classification systems. We've got several essential questions today. What is the classification system? What benefits does it provide? And why has it changed over time? So those are the questions that we will seek to answer throughout today's lesson. Is anyone else having that issue? Okay, well, good thing you're here in person. All you need is to be able to see can you see the screen from there? Okay, great. You need something to write with? Thank you. All right. Any questions before we get started? You guys a little tired today? Did anybody's sleep schedule change dramatically over spring break? I know mine did. I was going to sleep at like 2 a.m., waking up at 11. So it's, today is a good warm up to knock off some of that rust, being awake a lot earlier. All right. So scientists use an 8-level system to organize all living organisms based on common characteristics and evolutionary relationships. 8-level system. You've heard some of these words before. We'll talk about them. But to answer one of those essential questions, why or what benefits do these classification systems provide? They allow us to look at organisms in ways that point out their common characteristics. We see their similarities. And we can also see how closely related they are evolutionarily. Have they evolved from common ancestors? These are the types of questions we can answer based on these classification systems. So if we're looking at this image that's on the screen now, on the right side of that image, we see the word domain, the top right of that image. And that domain includes a whole bunch of different organisms. We've got obviously mammals. I can see birds and fish as well, and reptiles. And I even see plants, and I see fungi. All right, so we'll talk about why that domain is so inclusive of most life forms. But then when we move a little bit to the left, we're looking at what's called a kingdom. And if you notice in that kingdom, I don't see any what looks like, I don't see any fungi there. So that the mushroom is gone. And it also looks like the plants are gone as well. Then we move a little bit further to the left and we look at a phylum. And in that case, it looks like we get rid of insects. I don't see that butterfly present in the phylum anymore. Move further to the left and we're looking at a class. Now we're only looking at mammals. So yes, they're still animals, but we're no longer talking about reptiles or fish or birds, only thinking about mammals. Then we move to an order. And in that case, we're only looking at carnivores. So we get rid of that zebra because zebras are herbivores. So what we're doing, actually, hopefully you've noticed this, is we're getting more specific. We start off with the domain that includes basically all life forms. In fact, this domain focuses specifically on eukaryotic life forms. That's why it's called eukarya. And then as we move to the left in this case, we're getting more and more specific. Sade, your Bengals are providing a nice soundtrack back there. Okay. So this isn't actually on your paper, but if you want to write something down, for those of you who are here in person, that might be a good idea. The classification system is always changing, primarily because of research, biotechnology, and the discovery of new species. As these things are happening, scientists are able to make better connections between the species. "270 years ago, in 1753, everything was classified simply as plant or animal. And of course, microscopes had not yet been invented, so we had no idea of really knowing anything about microscopic organisms. There was no way for us to even know that they existed, really. So we just simply labeled everything as plant or animal. Of course, microscopes were then developed. We discovered new species. We started to develop this idea of evolution, and we looked into the relationships between species. And doing that allowed us to say, like, okay, there's a clear difference between plants and animals. There's a clear difference between plants and fungi. And then with the development of microscopes, we started to learn more about bacteria. And clearly there was a difference between bacteria and all other life forms. So we start to classify them in different ways. We organize them into different subsets. And it's been the development of technology that has allowed us to do this, as well as the discovery of new species. For example, humans. Does anybody know the scientific name for humans? Homo sapiens. Good. Thank you, Ayana. It was once thought, and I can actually pull up a video and show you all this, but it was once thought that we were the only species of humans. It's true, we are now the only species that is currently living, but there were other species of Homo organisms that were at one point living. So we are Homo sapiens, but there were Homo neanderthals. You guys have probably heard about the Neanderthals. I think scientifically it's pronounced Neanderthal. And there were also Homo deus. There was also the Denisovans. These were all species of humans that once lived in different places, around the world. And, the fact that they are now extinct is actually a pretty big question in science. How did that happen? Why were Homo sapiens the only species to survive? But there actually was some amount of interaction between Homo sapiens and other species of humans. And we know this because we can look in the DNA of current humans and see some people have Neanderthal DNA. That doesn't mean that they are not human. It doesn't mean that they are less human. They are still Homo sapiens, but we can see the markers of Homo Neanderthal in their DNA, which is pretty fascinating. Okay. So yes, here are the 8 levels of classification. For those of you who are here in person, you can write this. You should write this. Please make sure that you also include the words general and specific as well. Domain is the most general level of classification. And species is the most specific level of classification. Now, I've also written on the board Mnemonic Device. A mnemonic device is basically just an acronym, or it's something that helps you to remember things better. It aids in memory. So one way that a lot of science teachers help their students to remember the 8 levels of classification is with this mnemonic device, this acronym. Do, keep, pond clean, or froggy gets sick. Of course, each level corresponds, or each letter, I'm sorry, corresponds to one of the levels of classification. So D corresponds to domain. K is kingdom. P is phylum. Do, keep, pond clean, or froggy gets sick. You can obviously make up your own mnemonic devices. They are a great study tool. You know, if you can come up with your own sentence that works, then I'd be happy for you to share. I think a couple of years ago, students kind of used the sentence. I can't remember what the first 4 words were, but it was "or fights get started." That was the OFGS, or fights get started. So, you can come up with your own sentences and mnemonic devices. In fact, I think it's a good thing to do. It's a good idea. Really quickly. Yeah, so feel free to write down my sentence in your notes as well. All right. There are 2 ways that we can name organisms. We use the full classification very, very rarely. More commonly, we just use the scientific name. Of course, the full classification would include all 8 levels, and that would just be a lot to write down. So it really makes a lot more sense to only include the 2 levels for the scientific name. And those 2 levels are genus and species. You only would include the genus and the species when you are writing the scientific name. This is also known as binomial nomenclature. In other words, naming using 2 words, the genus and the species. So, for example, for human beings, the full classification includes the domain, which is eukarya. It includes the kingdom, which is animals. It includes the phylum, which is chordates. It includes the class, which is mammals, the order, primates, the family, hominids, the genus, Homo, and the species, sapien. But the scientific name would just be Homo sapien. We only include those last 2, the genus and the species. Notice that in the scientific name, it's written italicized, which means that it's slanted like that. That's done intentionally. You always need to write it in that way. And notice that the genus is capitalized. Homo has a capital H, but the species is not capitalized. Sapien has a lowercase s. So it has to be written in that way. Both phrases, both words are italicized, and the genus is written with a capital letter, whereas the species is written with a lowercase letter. That's the correct way of writing the scientific name. Of course, if you're actually writing it, then it's kind of difficult to write italicized, so you would just underline it. Okay, good to know. Any questions about anything? Pretty simple stuff. Okay. We're going to talk about dichotomous keys as well as what are called phylogenetic trees. sometimes referred to as cladograms. Phylogenetic, that just means, philo means kind of family. And then, of course, genetic is referring to the genes. So both of these classification systems allow us to, like I said, compare species and see how similar they are. Dichotomous keys are sets of two statements that can be used to identify organisms. And the statements will be numbered. So you should always start with the first statements. So the way this works is that you'd be given a picture or an image of some species, and then you're going to answer questions based on what you're able to see about the species. So here we've got an image of what looks to be a cheetah, but we want to find the scientific name of that species. So we need to look at these statements in the dichotomous key. The first set of statements says solid coat or not solid coat. Does the species have a solid coat or does it not have a solid coat? It's not solid. No, it's spotted. Solid would mean that it's just one color. So because it's not solid, then do we go to 2 or do we go to 3? You go to 3. Yeah. Not solid coat tells us to go to 3. So now we need to look at the bottom of the dichotomous key. We're looking at that third set of statements, which says, is it striped? That says stripped, but it should say striped. Is it striped or spotted? It's spotted. So based on that, what is the scientific name of this species? Kind of hard to pronounce. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it starts with an A, right? Let's say Acinonyx jubatus. That's the scientific name. So that's how these dichotomous keys work. You just need to be able to look at an image of the species or whatever information you're presented about, and then kind of jump from one statement to the next. Pretty simple. And again, the scientific name writes the genus first and the species second. All right, what about this one? Same dichotomous key, but it's going to have a different scientific name, right? So look at the image. Does it have a solid coat or a not solid coat? This species has a solid coat. So based on that, what happens now? What do we do? What'd you say? We go to 2. We go to the second group of statements. And then the second group of statements is saying, is it a smooth coat, long tail, no mane, or is it a smooth coat with a mane? Yeah, it looks like there's no mane here. So that tells us that this is Felis concolor. Concolor. It sounds like, I'm sure it's not actually Spanish, but concolor, that of course would be with color, right? Okay, and then these phylogenetic trees. A little bit more to write now. All right, so the closer organisms are on one of these phylogenetic trees, the more closely related they are. And we're not talking about them being cousins or anything like that. What we mean is that evolutionarily, they are closely related. They have a common ancestor that might have only existed 50,000 years ago, right? That's not a long time in the grand scheme of things, considering that some species are millions of years old. Where the lines intersect shows common ancestry. And what we're seeing is literally species are branching off of one another. So something happened and species 1 and 2 got separated. Maybe it was that there was some type of physical separation. Maybe it was that they stopped mating at the same time. Maybe it was that one of them got better at eating a certain type of food than another. We'll talk about the reasons and the causes of speciation a little bit later in the unit. But something happened and it caused the two species to separate. They became two different species. But at some point in the distant past, they had a common ancestor. Okay. Need a little bit more time. Okay. All right. So you can literally read these cladograms or these phylogenetic trees just like a timeline. Some of them will also include some characteristics along the timeline as well. So in this image that you all are seeing on your screen now, we see characteristics like a vertebrae, the introduction of a bony skeleton, the introduction of 4 limbs. And of course, the closer two species are, the more closely related they are. So what are the least closely related species in this cladogram? The least closely related. The shark and it looks like you could probably go even more distantly related than that. The birds, yeah, the sharks and the birds appear to be very, very distantly related. You have to go back a long way to find their common ancestor. Versus birds and crocodiles have a much more close relationship. Their common ancestor was not that long ago. Rodents and primates, again, they have a close relationship. Their common ancestor was not long ago. But for example, sharks and amphibians, their common ancestor was a little bit longer in the past, more distantly related. Okay, do I have another question here? Let's see, hold on. Oh, so let's see, if we're looking at this phylogenetic tree, which species would we expect to not have 4 limbs? Which species evolved before 4 limbs came to be? Which species in this phylogenetic tree evolved before 4 limbs? So again, these are it's like a timeline moving this way. This is a long time as we move up. So which species evolved before the 4 limbs? It goes this way, moving up, moving up. So yeah, you're right. The shark clearly evolved before 4 limbs, as did the raven fish. They evolved, they split off from the family before 4 limbs came to be. Does that make sense? So again, let me ask another one. Which species would you expect to have amniotic eggs? Okay, the primates. Yeah, they came after amniotic eggs. Who else? The amphibians. The amphibians came before amniotic eggs. That's what you said. I'm talking about, I said which ones do have it. So which ones come after? The birds have it, yeah. The crocodiles, the rodents, and the rabbits. Yeah, they all came after the introduction of this amniotic egg. All right, so that's why we include these characteristics. Everything that came before this point does not have an amniotic egg. So amphibians, ray-finned fish, sharks, they don't have amniotic eggs. All right. So you guys are going to get more practice. We've got 2 assignments today, and we've made good timing. So you've got over 30 minutes to knock this out. There is an exit ticket. U8D1 classification practice is on Canvas. It's a Canvas quiz. You could say the primates and the rabbits, or you could say the birds and the crocodiles. They appear to be similarly related. The flip and flop practice is going to take you to a Google. You're going to have to make a copy of a Google document. But actually, I think you have enough time to knock both of these out. So let's be productive. You guys should have seen your grades be updated before the break. So some of you probably are looking in Power School like, uh-oh, it's time for me to get back on my game. So let's start today. Don't put yourself behind. Let's get ahead, knock out these assignments. I think they're doable. Love to see people using their time wisely. 122. This class is over at 9:45. Does anybody need help with the dichotomous keys? It's Unit 8D1. So hit collapse all. Let's scroll down and just make it a little bit faster. Unit 8. Big one. It's D1. Yes. Okay, change the big. So guys, next Tuesday will be the last day of this unit, April 20th. So keep that in mind. All of your assignments will be due on April 20th. Did you travel for spring break? Where'd you go? Yeah, you look like you got some sun. Was it fun? Yeah. So, I think go ahead and knock out the paper, but I would really want to see you do the assignments. How are you doing, Bruno?
This podcast is supported by Dichotomous. Right now, the world is facing great uncertainty, which makes it challenging to plan forward. The ones involving response recovery cash collection can help. It features perspectives from diverse business, technology, and industry leaders. Creating help executives
Just one more assignment that you can knock out. It's called closing clock practice. I think you'll be able to finish that today as well.
One.com/us/COVID-19.
Scroll back up to the top. Click on collapse all. And it'll be easy to scroll down.
I started the curtain machine display. A couple of weeks ago, I finally got something I've been lying there from my coronavirus vaccine shot. I felt so relieved and informed, but the announcement quickly expanded by all the new questions I had. How is this vaccine changed my daily life? Can I visit my friends? Do I still have to wear my mask? Can I travel? Over a year into the pandemic, there are still so many unknowns. Have we learned enough to keep new journeys today? Or are we doomed to repeat our past mistakes? When is this going to end? To get some answers to all these pressing health questions, I needed to talk to an epidemiologist. You know, someone whose job is actually said the entire prevent pandemics happening, if only we listen to them. So I called one up, Michelle A. Williams, Dean of the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard. Welcome to New Orleans. Hi, Tara. Thank you for coming. Let's first talk about people thinking about public health constantly over the last year. This is your area of expertise. And I know in a certain way most people haven't experienced this before. I certainly haven't. I'm pretty old. But what's it been like for you? I love, first of all, that more people know what epidemiology is. Yeah. Like epidemiology. Were you like not talking about it before? People tell me I'm a doctor. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. You know, this has been an incredible opportunity for people to understand how it's undervalued and not seen public health. That is everywhere and nowhere. It's everywhere when hurricane happens or pandemic happens. It's nowhere when we say that and prevent that. We tend to take that for granted. And we forget that. This pandemic, this pandemic has all the. So what I take away from this pandemic is the collateral benefit is now everybody understands why public health is important. Everybody understands that when we underinvest in public health, it doesn't benefit you. I mean, you're coming away, you're not doing that. And people from my background, some extra one, it feels like we already have that. Talk about why you guys talk about this sport. Here, this sport is going to be different than the previous had before. This workplace is occurring at the same time. They're wrapping up. You've got to it's not as far back as here, but there's another player that upwards of 4 million vaccinations. So we've got to maintain that, and we've got to keep pushing it. A lot of parts say that. Yeah, and we've got to outline we spend time on surveillance and identification of surveillance. What is the worst case scenario then? Is that these vaccines don't knock on it, right? If people feel safe, they feel essentially safety, and they want to do things, and they're not going to die, and then they do things. The worst case scenario is and we don't have 20 minutes. I don't know why it's because you want people to understand what is the risk. You want people to understand what is so black and white. And what Dr. Walensky was trying to say is how to bring on your personal individual impression of going back to normal. It's not to go back and do everything that you were used to doing pre-February 20. Think about the fact that there are still spreading communities that 2/3 of the country is still not vaccinated.
Are you getting an error too?
And if you're vaccinated, these are the things that you can do for the vaccinated people. First, to open the doors and celebrate like the practice of control. There's also confusion with the industry. There's been guidance as to whether or not people who are vaccinated can travel. Why is this message so novel that I know this happens in other countries all the time? And what is the message about that? Yeah, so, I think the message is those people who are vaccinated can travel, but limited to essential travel. And I think that was the piece that was missing. In fact, yeah, it was like essential travel. And it came out muddled. And it was really sad because then, maybe it was all over. So I think what we really communicating with measured re-engagement. And what about wearing masks and social distancing? Wearing masks, keep doing social distancing in public spaces. And again, why? The why is because the barrenness of circulating at levels that we are not yet fully understanding. And so there on the side of caution, because of the possibility of that. Yeah, so that's not that it's not that
It should work now. It says Alexa chat.
Your physical double students only during the second half. In the Google spreadsheet that is predominant shares with us for daily basis, transfer it to your daily number for your second block students, so we can have an idea of how the system physically on campus. Thank you.
as the virus is running, which unduly unnecessarily burdening this means essential workers who, unlike those of us with a college education, could retreat to our home office. You know, the discoveries right now just designed to fulfill public health needs. I think right now the kind of perspective that is absolutely the public scheme. What were the disparities? So remember what we saw in the market? We saw double, triple rates of infection in Latinx populations. And that's why we're their percentage of population by several percentage points. Absolutely. We also saw medical and higher rates of hospitalization and higher rates of death. We realized very early on that the public health interventions that we were suggesting was called socially isolate. All of those are not necessarily opportunities at low rate hires. Basically, student public health is health disparities as a consequence of decades, if not centuries, of policies and practices that have deprived of the opportunities to have healthcare wellness the way that we are. The science is some experience across racial and technical assessments. It does direct and indirect ways. So, overseas. Conditions and associated professions and populations. For less more, we know this in part. When the company disrupted tells the story of her experience before he's even born, delivery is actors. And then he comes into the world in a poor, multiple community in housing with red paint all over. So you've got the intergenerational in utero insult on his development, attenuation, or into a physical environment that further attenuates his opportunities for normal growth and development, and then forced holds that further attenuate growth for normal development. And then aggressive, some would say inhumane policing system attenuates his life. And you can see how really complex and intergenerational some of these threats could be. These are folks living on the margin. When new risk comes along, they're inherently more vulnerable, biologically, socially, physically. So when COVID came around, these vulnerable populations, we could have predicted them. And because we could have predicted these things, we should have and we must be prepared to attenuate these disparities. Except that in the case of marathon centers, don't worry about it. Yeah. I believe in the goodness of people, and I believe that we're understanding what she will is doing just in a health class for 3 weeks. And I have to believe that if we're able to really align thinking about this
Just go ahead and do this. My 30 seconds again.
Leadership through understanding the narrative and the data about how we can thrive while also caring for vulnerable populations and reducing disparities. We will be in a better place. Public health course for 3 weeks. You know, lifetime teacher, there's something which is not coachable. Hopefully, the U.S. has pretty good vaccine rollout. As the most states are vaccinated. The distribution is really fragmented in states making their own call skills. What you think of the distribution system, because it was sort of everything for themselves and state for themselves. You know, this is another one of those areas where I'm hopeful, but I'm cautiously optimistic. So one of the things that we have to do early on is make sure that we have the supply to meet the demand. And Biden's administration has done that well enough. But what we also found ourselves locked in is another one of those false narratives that equity would happen at the cost of efficiency. And, you know, I'm going to push back on that false dichotomy because then we don't need the case. As these spectacular vaccines came along, my colleagues in public health and I wrote this paper that basically said vaccine allocation should be done through a lens of equity and justice. And that because we saw such great disparities in worse off minority populations, we have to have an allocation plan that manages to bring these vaccines into communities harvested. And we also vacillates around whether or not race-based privatization is illegal. So we said, let's use social vulnerability index that the CDC has used effectively in times of natural disasters. Because risks are segregated by place, and it's a hyper-segregated communities, black and brown, poor communities, and poor opportunity. So the social vulnerability index was used variables by density of household, unemployment rates, high rates of chronic disease. And would say these are the geographical areas within the community where we need to hit. And if put into place, one can then reach these vulnerable populations and maximize protection of the highest risk populations while equitably pushing out the vaccine. And that, you know, it's been heartbreaking. It's been heartbreaking to see vaccine distribution not get to those populations that need them the most. The one thing that's actually helping them is increasing the supply and pushing that supply out. And making sure that we're not just sending the vaccines to big box stores because many of them are not being black in brown communities. We have to reckon with the fact that vaccine efficacy has to be addressed. Yeah, I want to get into that in a second, but when there's limited supply, people are going to get, wait a second, why do I have to get on? I think answer that. You know, there's a collective mechanism here. That the reason, you know, I would be patient is because I have the luxury and I have the privilege of working at home. But the person stocking the shelves that are the essential workers, the VIP and the supply chain, and the goods that I need, are the people who need the vaccine the most. So I think for those people who say, why should I cut the line, why should I be there first? Think about it as a collective chain where cut the line at your peril of further stagnating the recovery of our country. It's the same with mask wearing, right? Why do I need to wear a mask? You know, I'm fine, I'm happy, but it's not about you, it's about the collective community. And somehow it's kind of lost the way you connect to that collective agency. I think it's one of the things that is a problem is algorithms, because they're not just determined by individual citizens, people make ethically. Public health experts said that the vaccine allocation algorithm used for federal level was a burden in many state and local municipalities was a full formula for men. Did any of these algorithms do what they're supposed to do? And can you talk a little bit about making these decisions in humans. First of all of these algorithms are going to be as good as the target. That impact is not extension. Exactly. And I've got to tell you, one of my biggest pet peeves about where we need to invest in public health has got to be we've got to have better data. There's a lot of missing data. There's a lot of education that was happening. There was a lot of happening data. But it's not just about the data measure. There's also a lack of observational preparedness. That is missing. We were fumbling way too many of the observational pieces. And what it told me is part of the legacy of our underinvestment in public health is not just getting the infrastructure, but it's getting the workforce. We were asking state and local health departments to implement an algorithm and then bring that algorithm into communities with the vaccination program. But it's been underinvested and undersupported for far too long. All right, making vaccines available is one thing. They're only helping people take them. In general, vaccine hesitancy is decreasing across the U.S., especially for young people. But there is some resistance. Why do we see hesitancy at this moment? The times is a concern of the unknown. It's probably this trust comes from, because everyone's got a different reason. This trust comes from many different places. Probably all those reasons have some basis of truth. Among the evangelicals, what I can tell is it's largely misinformation that is propagated by so-called religious leaders who are reading their odds and historical issues around reproductive health, abortion, and vaccines. So there's 7,000 effects on them. And we all know that that's completely ridiculous, and that is completely not true. And that's a deadly danger. And so we have to do something collectively as a society to break through and to bring truth and rebuild trust with this community. And I think it's going to mean having a campaign that is attentive to meeting these evangelicals where they are and having those hard conversations and having influencers, people who they might be listening to really be clear. There's also been a listing of our campaign native communities. Talk about the hesitancy of that group and getting money to change their minds. They obviously have a history of bad behavior and medical things. Can you talk a little bit about that? For 401 years, Black bodies have been traumatized. People still remember the Tuskegee Syphilis Project, right? People still remember the academics that happened in Mississippi. The academics are exactly. And then that legacy, failure to reckon with this legacy of trauma brought on Black people have contributed to hesitancy. However, that is not sufficient excuse for us now to reckon with these past harms that have been done and not confront this hesitancy. And one of the things we learned early was that work of our communities really respected the voices of their primary health and other community voices. And then have a stronger sense of corrective action. And so once community messages got out of the vaccine available when the vaccination communities are protected, that is generating trust. We still have a lot of work to do because it's not about 100% hesitancy. If we go down, we still have ways to go. Parents are not going to hesitancy about vaccine. Clinical trials are telling us that vaccines are safe for children. But some parents are hesitant to vaccinate. So they actually, no, they're not. They shouldn't be worried. But I'll tell you the reason they're worrying is because we just haven't gotten into it fast enough. There is a structural flaw in the way we do our science sometimes. And, one of the things that really kind of makes me get a little angry is women and children are always the back of the line. Right? It's like the dragonflies. It won't be until 2023 that the first randomized controlled clinical trial of these vaccines are available for pregnant women. And the information that we have, and I believe it and I trust it, comes from secondary analysis, not the same rigor of this intentional, deliberate, beautiful design that, started to come out with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. same thing with children, and I understand it, but pragmatic limitations are complex, you can do it, you know, very quickly. But that structural flaw in putting women and children later in the flow of evidence is important fertilization for this kind of question too. So we have conflicting advice from the World Health Organization CDC is pregnant women initially with the World Health Organization recommendation not to the CDC recommended we should consult with their doctors. So in the case of young people in pregnant women, one is to understand that the risk of contracting the infection and getting sick is higher than any right procedures of the vaccine. But there's some skepticism going on. Single shot Johnson vaccine is showing 72% efficacy in trials. So let's get the record straight. Probably the vaccine, whatever it is, should be taken. Absolutely. Any of them. Any of them. Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson, Johnson, available in this country. Absolutely. Take them. But you know, one of the difficult things around the chicken dairy vaccine is it's a one shot, you're one and done. So staying up to date on this is incredibly important in real challenge. So how do you improve communication in general and particularly in the era of misinformation, which is reaching people through social media, messaging out, word of mouth, everywhere. Some platforms that have labels to post about COVID and vaccines, redirecting users to critical social information. How do you enforce that? Well, this is kind of, you know, I mean, as a lay person in that space,
I guess the question is,
it's not a huge part of job. It's a 24/7 job where one has to be vigilant and you have to have people system really not fighting. It's an ongoing.
well, tomorrow, I forget to bring back that note. Have a good day.
It's got to be academic. So the benefit of social media and healthcare is not oh, absolutely. Social media is wonderful tool. Whether it's for doctors or fires, for ill or just for good. Now, you are battling, you know, Bill Gates, and he's putting chips in people's blood through the vaccine or unless you're very creative, but it's really not. But it's conspiracy theories that have to be pushed back. And again, if you have an educated audience and consumer, you would hope that you get a wise smile and you move on. Yeah. We'll be back in a minute.
Yes.
If you like this music and want to hear others, follow us on your favorite podcast. But you can catch up on the episodes you may miss.
One more time. I think more people would join it, you know. I know there's one more person, Ryan.
Like my conversations with the biotech co-founders who created the Pfizer vaccine, which I think, and if you want delivered directly to you. More with Michelle and Williams after the break. Great journalism applies relentless curiosity in search of the truth. And with every story, there's a need for analysis, context, and structure, all tools that help create positive change in the world. SAS shares the same value by turning data into answers. Using SAS analytics and AI, organizations drive progress, make better decisions, and improve lives. Because when curiosity and innovative analytics meet, people can do amazing things. Find out more at SAS.com/curiosity. That's SAS.com/curiosity. So let's talk about the next step. There's been much debate about vaccine passports, which could be required in schools and places for vaccination. Now, we use these kind of things all the time, but it's a license. And for some reason, this one stuff with people crazy. I'm trying to stand on in Florida. What are your thoughts on these? Are they helpful or harmful? You know, I think they could be both. I think helpful because it would be important for us to understand the local and localized.
Hello. What's that? How do you recognize it?
Harmful because it access
Yeah.
You can see how it would be
Well, I just try to throw something at the seeds. I think my day is coming around to look nice. But
So it's not cool.
I got to put my phone on my little thing on the charger because it was there. And I charged a little bit in extra class, but she was going to my show. I don't know what she was doing. I put on the charger. Anybody else coming to this class?
And if they're misused, we could be driving disparities. I also think instead of there is some discussion. So questions I ask you really on to the global forecast. Talk about them specifically. Well, one was the mitigation of February 7th.
Are you on
And
Google Meet?
funds to the Federation.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
I don't think anybody is.
I was just sitting here the whole time and I went to go move my hair. Like,
Yeah, nobody's in here.